As discussed in the previous video, I intend for this to be my last Train Sim World 6 review before going on a hiatus from the topic for at least 1 month, or probably longer. To be clear, I'm not quitting YouTube, since I've still got TS Classic and real life train spotting, or possibly other games like Running Train, emphasis on possibly, to keep the channel going. Thinking back to TSW6, I chose the Medway Valley Line for review because, in a manner of speaking, I'm hoping to go out on a high note. That joke was an homage to Ronnie Barker, in the same way that the intro in my second remaster proposals video is an homage to a YouTuber of whom I am a fan. The Medway Valley Line add-on for Train Sim World 6 was developed by Firefly Simulations and released on the 26th of March 2026. That was only 9 days, insert a clip from absolutely parentheses story of a girl here, after Thomas and Friends' Sunders of Wodor, and during that 9-day window, we also got the overpriced NEC Metro North route for TSW6. Just 4 days after the Medway Valley, Dovetail also released the Class 90 electric locomotive add-on from ATS, which turned out to be a total disaster, and still hasn't been fixed after over a month. Go figure. Anyway, I didn't pick up the Medway Valley Line add-on at launch, as it was very close to my trip to Christchurch, a city on the South Island of New Zealand, and I had already spent enough money on Wonders of Sodor, NEC Metro North, and the BR194 and E94 rail tour pack, not to mention the London and South Western Railway H16 for TS Classic, so something had to give. That something was the Medway Valley Line. Incidentally, I recall one time when I saw that the Southeastern Train Operating Company themselves were doing a giveaway on Facebook in which people could enter for a chance to win the standard edition of TSW6 along with the Medway Valley Line. That giveaway would have ended a fair while ago now. As an aside, I am of the opinion that the rapid pace at which DLC had been released throughout March was nothing short of maddening, and at the time, I was wondering if/how DTG could sustain such an intensive release schedule long term. Come to think of it, the DLC releases in early 2026 have been so frequent that they could give trains on the London Underground's Victoria line a run for their money. Thinking back to the Medway Valley Line, it's pretty expensive with a full price of £30, or 57 New Zealand dollars, on Steam. The route coverage runs for 26 miles from Strood to Tonbridge, going via Maidstone West, and curiously, you also get the Gravesend to Rainham section of Southeastern High Speed as part of the MVL add-on. There is no discount for people who already own SEHS. As for motive power, the MVL doesn't include any classes that are new to TSW. Instead, you get 2 new variants for the Class 375 Electrostar, more specifically, the 3-car 375/3 and 4-car dual voltage 375/6. Still no 375/7 and 375/8, I see. That matter aside, and on a personal note, I did go through Tonbridge a couple of times near the end of my UK trip, but I don't have any real photographs or footage from the station itself. What I do have is this photograph of a Class 73 parked in the nearby Tonbridge West Yard, taken while I was passing by aboard a Class 465 heading to London Charing Cross. I also saw the Class 375s on multiple occasions, including at Grove Park and later Tunbridge Wells. However, none of the 375s I saw were the 375/3 variant. Thinking back to the 375 variants that you do get with this add-on, they have received new third rail sparking effects, working CCTV camera feeds for guard mode, and an improved sound set provided by It's Your 165, along with the TSW6 core features like train faults and onboard announcements. One especially noteworthy feature on the 375/3 and 375/6 is the fully functional GSMR radio module. Previous Modern Image UK trains in TSW have only had it where you press a button, and you'll just get the head code and signal details on the screen without having to press any other buttons. In the case of the 375/3 and a 375/6, you are able to set the train's head code and enter the number of the signal at which you're currently standing. In some cases, but not this one, you can also call the signaller, who will give a verbal response with relevant instructions. Unfortunately, the new GSMR feature hasn't been backported to the 375/9 that comes with Southeastern High Speed. However, the 375/9 hasn't been forgotten, as she has still received some updates in the form of new suspension physics, horns blasting on AI trains where appropriate, texture optimizations, and other improvements. The full list can be viewed through a link in the description. To add, the improvements were also added to the other trains from SEHS, that's the Class 395 and Class 465, and even the Class 700 got the improvements as well. Oddly enough, Firefly even modelled the disabled access toilet on board the 375/3 and a 375/6, something I've never seen on any other train in TSW before these ones. And what's even stranger is the fact that you can sit on the dunny. That's an alternative term for toilet that we sometimes use in Australia and New Zealand. I am both confused and amused by the presence of a fully modelled toilet on board this train. Meanwhile, you also get appropriate nameplates for 2 members of the class. Said nameplates will automatically appear on a unit if she spawns in with the number 375619 or 375623. I dare say that, if a train, be it a Class 375 or something else, was going to be named Jenny, then her number would need to be changed to 8675309. Timetable mode features 67 playable services for the 375/3 and 238 playable services for the 375/6. Additional DLC is required for the other layers in timetable mode, with said DLC requirements being Cargo Line Volumes 1 and 2, the Class 33, Linear A3 Flying Scotsman, Railhead Treatment Train, Southeastern High Speed, Thameslink Class 700, and the West Somerset Railway. The peak time service to Maidstone West, operated by Class 395s and running twice a day in each direction, is represented, but you can't drive it in its entirety without route hopping at Gravesend. It takes around 49 minutes to complete the run from Strood to Paddock Wood, with some services going all the way to Tonbridge at peak times. A full run from Strood to Tonbridge, or vice versa, takes around 56 minutes to complete on a stopping service. It's generally a half-hourly frequency between Strood and Paddock Wood, with only 10 of the 375/3's passenger services covering the section to Tonbridge as well. As for the 375/6, most of her services are really short because they're only playable between Tonbridge and Paddock Wood, or between Rochester and Rainham. Only 17 of her services are passenger runs on the Medway Valley Line itself. Of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that you can run empty stock movements to and from Gillingham Depot or Tonbridge Jubilee sidings. If you complete all the mastery challenges, you can unlock a scenery tile in the form of this abandoned ZBV wagon at Maidstone West, that's now used as a flower bed and apparently known as Grampus, presumably after that submarine from Tugs. As for the speed limit, it averages between 30 and 70 miles per hour on the Strood to Paddock Wood section, but the section from Tonbridge to Paddock Wood has a higher speed limit of 100 miles per hour. Meanwhile, you get Tonbridge West Yard on this route, but personally, I think the yard doesn't look right without any GB rail freight rolling stock in the game as official DLC, but if that's down to licensing restrictions, so be it. I specifically mention official DLC to try and avoid confusion, since the GBRF Class 66 at which you've been looking is from a mod pack made by Spratty Heath. Download link in the description. The Railhead Treatment Train add-on only includes one variant of the Class 66 as standard, that being the heavily weathered EWS livery. Before I forget, I should mention that, unfortunately, the 375/3 and 375/6 don't layer into the Southeastern High Speed timetable, so that route still only has 375/9s every time a 375 service appears, and the 375/9 doesn't appear in the Medway Valley Line timetable. In any case, I would still like to see the 375/7 and 375/8 added to TSW at some point, ideally as part of a route add-on going from Tonbridge to Hastings. Apparently, at initial launch, PC players were getting crashes on the Medway Valley Line due to conflicting mods and something to do with engine.ini tweaks, I think, although I don't understand what engine.ini means. It's ironic, in a way, because it's usually console players that have a rougher time than PC players, and this time it appeared to be the other way round. In any case, and on my end, I've never done anything with this engine.ini thing, nor did I have any of the problem mods installed in the first place. I don't know about you, but in my eyes, there seems to be a light haze over everything on this route, even in clear weather, and I haven't seen this hazy filter on other routes. Meanwhile, there is a representation of the hourly Red Hill to Tonbridge service in timetable mode, but by default, and for whatever reason, it's represented by Southeastern 375/3s instead of prototypical Southern Class 377/3s, even though we now have a 377/3 in the game. In addition to the lack of a 377/3 layer/substitution at Tonbridge, one of the few downsides to the route, in my opinion, is the inability to go inside of the signal boxes at Cuxton, Maidstone West and Wateringbury, even though they've got details modelled inside. And now for some random observations I made while exploring the route on foot. There are realistic Southeastern posters at all the stations. An authentic Southeastern network map as one of the collectibles, with the Bromley North branch, of all lines, being the first place I noticed on said map. Animated ticket barriers at Strood, Chatham, Gillingham and Tonbridge, this being the first time I had seen animated ticket barriers in TSW. There's also dedicated stop markers for Thameslink Class 700s where applicable, an option to fast travel to a random level crossing between Cuxton and Horling, nice looking artwork with green paint at Snodland, a signal at Yalding that was flashing red for some reason, an old-fashioned analogue clock at Paddock Wood, which even says Firefly on it, and I can read the old clock reasonably well despite being part of Gen Z. For some reason, the lifts at Paddock Wood remind me of Leominster Station on the Welsh Marches line, despite Leominster only having 2 tracks and no electrification.
Smoking is not allowed anywhere on this station or on trains. This includes e-cigarettes and vapes. Thank you.
Of course, one can't forget the immersive announcements on both the stations and trains.
Platform 2 for the 11:26 Southeastern, service to Paddock Wood, calling at Maidstone West, East Farley, Wateringbury, Yalding, Beltring and Paddock Wood. This train has 4 coaches. Platform 2 for the 11:26 Southeastern, service to Paddock Wood.
The next station is Maidstone West.
For some reason, Maidstone West reminds me of Tunbridge Wells, which was our last local station, if you will, while we were in England. This is despite Maidstone West having a tunnel on only one side of the station, and that extra track in the middle. Meanwhile, Tonbridge Wells is crammed into a small space between two tunnels and only has 2 tracks through the station. Meanwhile, you can fast travel to Aylesford Village, which is a short way down the line from Aylesford Station, and have a look at this memorial for someone named Andy Keane. I don't know who that was, but this is still a nice tribute regardless. I dare say I would do something similar for a lost friend or relative if I ever made a TSW route add-on. After looking at the memorial, I discovered that you can walk even further along the road and right up to the banks of the Medway. This is a very welcome addition to the immersion, if you ask me. Despite its name not rolling off the tongue well at all, I still consider Wateringbury to be my favourite station on the line. There's a pub close to Wateringbury Station named the 4 Foot. I initially thought this was a reference to the Glasgow subway, or some other system that used 4-foot gauge track, like the old trams in Wellington, New Zealand. But now I don't know what the pub's name is supposed to mean, or what that picture of Flying Scotsman has got to do with it. Meanwhile, I reckon that whoever did the voiceovers in the Medway scenarios did a good job on said voiceovers.
Morning, driver. Don't you just love the rain? No? Me neither. Anyway, make your way over to Jubilee Sidings to get sorted out and set up for today.
To be honest, it took me a while to realise that, on the 375/3 and 375/6, you have to flip a small lever to open the cab door, as opposed to simply clicking on the door to open it, as is normally the case in this game. One last thing before moving on to the conclusion. I noticed that you can walk up the stairs to the New Hythe Lane overbridge at New Hythe Station, then look back down on the station, whose bulky footbridge reminds me of the shelters at Chessington North for some reason, even though I never went to Chessington North. And if you get the timing right at New Hythe, in closing, I'm very impressed with Firefly's Medway Valley Line add-on for Train Sim World 6, to the point where I would give it an 8 out of 10, and I would also argue that Dovetail Games were beaten in their own backyard, so to speak. The Medway Valley Line is a nice change of pace from busier routes like the Brighton Main Line or West Coast Main Line Birmingham to Crewe. The included 375s have some welcome improvements to the point where you could argue that they're the best Electrostar variants currently in the game, and I particularly like the well-detailed scenery throughout the route, not to mention the immersive announcements. This is not to say that I think the route is a rip-off, but at the same time, and to be honest, I can't help thinking that this add-on doesn't offer as much value for money as other routes that cost the same price, seeing as you only get 26 miles of newly modelled track and 2 new variants for an EMU class that already exists in the game. To be fair to the Firefly team, and for all I know, they might not have wanted to do something too ambitious for their first route, and I can understand that if it's actually what happened, in the same way that I can still appreciate the work that went into this route, especially where the scenery detail is concerned. As for the mod conflicts, I heard that FAWX, I still don't know how to pronounce that one, to be honest, was receptive to feedback and worked to help people out. I appreciate it when developers work directly with customers to help sort out problems. If only Dovetail could have that same level of engagement with the community. In any case, I've been reliably informed of a post-release patch for the Medway Valley Line, but to be honest, I thought the route was already good enough to not need a post-release patch. But as good as the Medway Valley Line add-on may be from an overall quality perspective, in my opinion, it doesn't change the dodgy foundation on which TSW is built. I would highly recommend watching the recent videos from Train Sim Society because, when it comes to discussing the bigger picture, as in the state/future of the game, in more detail, Mr. Matt has, or at least had, more patience for that sort of thing than I do. I'm just a knowledgeable idiot that primarily reviewed items of DLC. In any case, if you've stuck around to the end of the video, you win easy to understand icons for part of a drum kit. It's the simple symbol symbols